There's a particular kind of quiet that settles over a life when you finally stop arguing with the version of it other people have been writing for you. It doesn't arrive with fireworks or dramatic exits. It arrives on an ordinary Tuesday evening in a quiet Albuquerque neighborhood when the desert light is turning everything soft and golden and someone you barely know shows up at your door carrying a truth you never asked for. If you've ever sensed that the people closest to you were shaping your story behind your back, gently steering you with guilt with "we're just looking out for you," with quiet agreements you weren't allowed to hear, then I hope you'll stay with me. I'd really like to know if any of this lands with you. My name is Emily Vargas, and I'm 34 years old. I work as a freelance book editor from the small Adobe-style house I bought 3 years ago in a peaceful pocket of Albuquerque. The work suits me: long hours at my kitchen table, red pen in hand, noticing every inconsistency, every missing piece, every place where the narrative doesn't quite hold together. I thought I was good at seeing those things in stories. I didn't realize I had stopped seeing them in my own life. For almost a decade, my best friend Hannah Sullivan had been the steady center of my world. We met in our mid-20s at a community writing workshop and never really let go of each other. She was the one who showed up with soup when I had the flu, who remembered every deadline, who told me I was too hard on myself when I doubted my choices. 2 years ago, Lucas Bennett entered the picture, charming in that low-key way, always ready with a quiet joke or a hand on my shoulder when the world felt heavy. The three of us became the kind of unit other people commented on. "You three are so lucky to have each other," they'd say. I believed it. Loyalty, I've learned, can be the most effective blindfold. It started with small things I brushed aside. Hannah would text after I mentioned a new editing project that excited me. "Are you sure you have the bandwidth for that? Remember how overwhelmed you got last time? We don't want you burning out again." Lucas would echo it later over dinner, his voice gentle. "She's right, Em. You tend to overcommit when you're trying to prove something." I would feel a small sting, then the familiar warmth of being cared for. They were looking out for me. They always had. Then came the evening Tyler Quinn knocked on my door. I knew him only in passing, someone Hannah had introduced me to at a neighborhood gathering a year earlier. He worked in community outreach, quiet, thoughtful, the kind of person who listened more than he spoke. When I opened the door that Tuesday, he looked like he had been arguing with himself for days. His hands were shoved deep in his jacket pockets. "Emily, I'm sorry to just show up," he said, voice low. "I've been sitting on something for months and I can't do it anymore. It's about Hannah and Lucas. They made an agreement about you, about how to keep things the way they wanted them. I invited him in because the alternative was standing frozen in the doorway. We sat at my kitchen table, the same one where I edited other people's lives into coherence. Tyler pulled out his phone, hesitated, then set it between us. "I was at a small get-together a while back," he said. "They didn't know I was still in the next room. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but once I heard it, I couldn't unhear it. I recorded the tail end on my phone because I didn't trust my own memory. I've been carrying it around trying to decide what to do with it." He tapped the screen. A voice memo began to play, Hannah's voice, first clear and matter-of-fact, in the way she always sounded when she was solving a problem. She starts talking about needing more space or wanting to take that editing contract in Santa Fe. You just remind her how much we've carried her through the rough patches. She owes us that much. You know how she gets when she feels untethered. Lucas's voice answered, quieter but steady. "Yeah. It's easier if she stays grateful. We keep the narrative simple. She's the one who needs the stability we give her. She won't question it if we frame it as looking out for her." There was a short laugh from Hannah. "Exactly. Blind loyalty is her superpower. We just have to make sure it stays pointed in the right direction." The recording ended. The kitchen was so quiet I could hear the refrigerator humming. Tyler looked at me not with pity, but with something closer to regret. I don't know the full context. I don't know what rough patches they were talking about, but I know what it sounded like they had decided together how your story was going to go, and they were going to use your own loyalty to keep you from rewriting it. I didn't cry. I didn't raise my voice. I asked him very calmly if he would send me the file. He did. Then he stood up, said he was sorry again, and left. The door clicked shut behind him with a sound that felt final. I sat at the table for a long time. After that, the phone in my hands, the voice memo saved. I played it once more, then again. Each time the words landed differently, not explosive, just precise. They had been writing the rules of my own life in a room I wasn't in. I thought about all the times my best friend had gently steered me away from opportunities that would have taken me outside our small circle, the times my boyfriend had echoed her concerns with that same soft concern, the way both of them had been there unfailingly during the year my mother was sick and I had felt most untethered. I had been so grateful, so loyal. Now I was sitting in the quiet house I had bought on my own, holding proof that the loyalty had been turned into a tool. I didn't call Hannah. I didn't text Lucas. Instead, I opened my laptop and began going back through old messages, old group chats, old calendar invites. I wasn't looking for drama. I was looking for the pattern, the quiet, consistent way decisions had been shaped around me without my full participation. That night, I also sent a message to Dr. Priya Sharma, the therapist I had seen off and on for the past 2 years. I asked if she had any openings that week. I didn't tell her why yet. I just knew I needed somewhere safe to lay out what I was starting to see. Before I went to bed, I stood at the window and watched the last of the desert light fade over the low rooftops. The neighborhood was still, my house was still, but something fundamental had shifted. The story I had been living, the one where my best friend and my boyfriend were the steady protective constants, was no longer the only version on the table. There were other pages, and I was finally ready to read them. The next morning, I woke before the sun and sat at the same kitchen table with my laptop open and a mug of coffee growing cold beside me. I went back through years of messages, group chats, and calendar notes the way I would edit a manuscript line by line, looking for the places where the story had been quietly rewritten. What I found was not one dramatic betrayal, but a steady pattern of gentle course corrections. Every time I mentioned wanting more space, a new project, or even just a weekend alone, my best friend would respond with a soft reminder of how much she and Lucas had carried me through my mother's long illness 2 years earlier. We were the ones who showed up when no one else did, she would text. Lucas would follow with something quieter, but just as effective. I just don't want to see you get overwhelmed again, Em. You know how that ends. I had always read those messages as love. Now they read like a script they had both agreed to follow. I kept the voice memo Tyler had given me, saved but untouched for most of the day. Instead, I made an appointment with Dr. Priya Sharma for that afternoon. I had seen her on and off since my mother died, mostly to talk through the grief that sometimes still caught me off guard. This time I needed something different. I needed a place where I could say the words out loud without them being turned back on me as proof that I was too sensitive. Dr. Sharma listened without interrupting while I played the short recording once. When it ended, she set her notebook aside and asked very gently what I was most afraid of losing if I stopped letting them steer. The question landed harder than I expected. I told her I was afraid of being alone, of proving them right, that I couldn't handle things without their steadying hands. She nodded and said something I have turned over in my mind every day since loyalty is only a virtue when it's chosen freely. When it's maintained through guilt, it stops being loyalty and becomes a cage someone else holds the key to. I left her office feeling both lighter and heavier. The truth was out in the open now, at least with one person who had no stake in keeping me small. That night, I didn't call my best friend or my boyfriend. I simply replied to their usual evening check-in texts with short, neutral answers. Within an hour, Hannah texted again, longer this time. You've seemed off the last couple of days. After everything we've been through together, I hope you know you can still talk to me. We're the ones who have always been here for you when things got hard. The guilt was so familiar it almost felt comforting. Almost. Lucas called instead of texting. His voice was warm, concerned. Hannah mentioned, "You've been quiet. Everything okay? You know we're both here if you need us." I told him I was fine, just busy with edits. He accepted it too easily. That was when I noticed the new pattern neither of them pushed when I gave them an easy out. They simply waited for me to come back to the script they had written. 3 days later, the invitation arrived. My cousin was having a small housewarming for the townhouse she had just bought on the other side of the neighborhood. It was the kind of low-key gathering that used to feel like home potluck string lights in the small backyard people I had known for years, Hannah texted immediately, "We should all go together. It'll be good for you to get out and be around people who care." Lucas added a heart emoji. I said yes, because declining would have required an explanation I wasn't ready to give. The night of the party, I wore a simple dress and arrived a little late on purpose. The backyard was already full of familiar faces. My cousin had set up a speaker playing a shuffled playlist from someone's phone. Tyler Quinn was there too, standing near the fence looking like he wished he were anywhere else. He caught my eye once and gave a small, careful nod. I nodded back. We both knew what we were carrying. Hannah and Lucas arrived together, laughing about something, and immediately folded me into their usual orbit. My best friend kept a hand on my arm while she talked to other people, as if physical contact could keep me from drifting. Lucas stayed close on my other side, refilling my water glass before I asked. It was all so seamless, so practiced, that for a few minutes I almost doubted what I had heard on the recording. Then the playlist hit a voice memo someone had accidentally left in the queue. It started as background noise laughter, clinking glasses, then Hannah's voice, cut through, clearly recorded from another night, another conversation she thought was private. She's been talking about that solo editing trip again. We can't let her do that. If she starts feeling independent, she'll realize she doesn't need us as much, and then Lucas loses the steady thing he likes. We just keep reminding her how much she needed us when her mom was sick. Guilt works better than anything else with her. The backyard went quiet in patches as people realized what they were hearing. My cousin fumbled with the speaker trying to skip the track, but it played long enough for the words to land. Lucas froze with a beer halfway to his mouth. Hannah's hand tightened on my arm for 1 second too long before she let go. I didn't make a scene. I didn't raise my voice. I simply turned to my best friend and said very calmly, "That's the second recording I've heard this week. How many more are there?" Her face went through several expressions in rapid succession, surprise calculation, then the familiar softening she used when she wanted to steer me. "Emily, that was taken completely out of context. We were just worried about you. You know how you get when you're stressed." Lucas tried to step in, his voice low and reasonable. "Let's not do this here. We can talk about it later, just the three of us, like we always do." I looked at both of them, at the people who had written the rules of my own story, while I was still living inside it, and felt something settle into place. Not anger, something quieter and much harder to undo. "I think we've done enough talking the way you two prefer," I said. Then I turned, walked through the small crowd of people who were politely pretending not to have heard anything, and left the party without looking back. Tyler caught up with me at the end of the driveway. He didn't say much, just walked beside me for half a block in the cooling night air. "You okay?" he asked eventually. "I will be," I answered. And for the first time in a long time, I meant it. Back at my house, I sat on the front step for a while before going inside. My phone lit up with messages from Hannah, long emotional paragraphs about how much they loved me, how everything they did was for my own good, how I was overreacting because I had always been sensitive. Lucas sent one shorter text, "We need to talk. Don't shut us out." I didn't answer either of them. Instead, I opened a new document on my laptop and began typing out everything I remembered, the patterns, the guilt, the quiet agreements that had shaped the last 2 years of my life. It wasn't for anyone else yet, it was for me, because if I was going to rewrite the ending, I needed to know exactly which parts had never been mine to begin with. The desert night was still and wide around my little house. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked once and went quiet. I kept typing. For the first time in years, the story I was telling. The days after the housewarming party unfolded with a strange, deliberate slowness. I didn't rush to confront anyone. Instead, I let the silence do some of the work. My best friend sent long, carefully worded messages that circled back to the same theme, how much she and Lucas had sacrificed to be there for me, how ungrateful it would be to question their intentions now. My boyfriend called twice. Both times, I let it go to voicemail and then listened to the messages later, noting the way his concern always circled back to us as a unit that included Hannah. The script was still running even after it had been exposed. I spent most of that first week with Dr. Priya Sharma. In her quiet office, I laid out the full pattern, not just the recordings, but the years of small redirections disguised as care. She helped me see what I had been too loyal to name before. The hidden agreement between them had never been about protecting me. It had been about preserving the version of me that needed them. The one who stayed grateful, the one who didn't leave. By the end of the week, I sent one calm, clear message to both of them. I needed space to sort through what I had learned, and I would reach out when I was ready. Hannah replied within minutes, with a wall of text about how this was exactly the kind of overreaction she had always worried about. Lucas's reply was shorter, but carried the same weight. We've always been honest with you. This feels like you're punishing us for caring too much. I didn't answer either one. Tyler Quinn checked in once just to ask if I was okay. I told him I was getting there. He didn't push. That small, respectful distance felt like oxygen. 2 weeks later, I agreed to meet them at a neutral cafe on the edge of the neighborhood. I chose the time and the place. I arrived early, ordered my own coffee, and sat with my back to the wall so I could watch the door. When they walked in together, I noticed how automatically they scanned the room for me, how they moved as a single unit. It was the same choreography I had once found comforting. Hannah sat first, already reaching across the table as if to take my hand. I kept mine around my mug. Lucas settled beside her, his expression a careful blend of concern and mild offense. "I'm glad you finally wanted to talk, my best friend," said voice soft with practiced warmth. "We've both been worried sick. You know we only ever wanted what was best for you." I let the words hang for a moment before I answered. I listened to the recordings again, both of them, and I went back through years of messages and conversations. The pattern is very clear. You two decided together how to keep me from making choices that would have taken me outside the three of us. You used the hardest year of my life, my mother's illness, as leverage to make me feel like I owed you my loyalty forever. That wasn't care. That was control. Lucas shifted in his seat. "Emily, that's not fair. We were there for you when no one else was. That creates a bond. We were just making sure you didn't throw it away because you were scared of being alone." Hannah nodded, eyes already shining with the tears she could summon on command. "You've always been sensitive. We knew if we didn't remind you how much you needed the stability we gave you, you'd pull away and regret it later. That's what friends do. They protect each other from their own worst impulses." I felt the old reflex rise, the automatic urge to soften, to reassure them that I understood, that I was grateful. I let it pass without acting on it. "And what you protected was the version of me that stayed small and dependent," I said quietly. "And you did it by mutual agreement. You wrote the rules of my story while I was still living inside it. I'm done living by those rules." The silence that followed was different from the silences we used to share. This one had edges. Hannah's face changed first. The softness hardened into something sharper. "So that's it. After everything we've done for you, you're just going to throw us away because you heard a couple of private conversations taken out of context. You're going to let one bad night at a party erase years of friendship." Lucas leaned forward, voice low and reasonable in the way that used to make me second-guess myself. "We can work through this. We always have. Just come back to the way things were. We'll be more careful with how we talk about things. You don't have to do this alone." I looked at both of them, at the people who had been the center of my world for so long, and felt the last thread of that old loyalty finally give way. "I'm not doing it alone," I said. "I'm doing it without the two of you rewriting the ending for me. I'm taking the editing contract in Santa Fe. I'm keeping the space I asked for. And I'm not explaining myself anymore." Hannah stood up so quickly her chair scraped the floor. For the first time I saw real anger beneath the performance. "You're going to regret this. When things get hard again, and they will, you'll remember who was actually there for you. We won't be waiting forever." She walked out without looking back. Lucas stayed a moment longer, studying me like he was trying to find the right angle to re-enter the conversation. When he couldn't, he simply said, "I hope you know what you're giving up." Then he followed her. I sat alone at the table and finished my coffee. The cafe noise rose around me, ordinary conversations, ordinary lives, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years, the quiet, steady presence of my own choices. In the weeks that followed, the distance did its work. Hannah stopped messaging after the third unanswered text. Lucas sent one final stiff note about hoping we could still be civil. I didn't reply. The mutual friends who had once seen us as an inseparable trio slowly divided themselves. Some reached out to check on me, others faded. Tyler became a quiet, occasional presence, never pushing, never asking for more than I offered. Dr. Priya Sharma and I continued meeting, not because I was broken, but because I wanted to understand how I had let someone else hold the pen for so long. I took the solo editing trip to Santa Fe. The work was good, the solitude was better. In the evenings, I walked the old streets and thought about the lesson that had cost me so much to learn. Blind loyalty doesn't just harm the person who gives it, it slowly erases the person they could have become. 6 months later, I still live in the same quiet house in Albuquerque. The desert light still turns the evenings gold. I still edit other people's stories for a living, but now I'm also writing my own in small, deliberate ways. I have new routines, new boundaries, and a small circle of people who don't require me to stay grateful for the right to exist as I am. My best friend and my boyfriend are no longer part of that circle. The ending isn't neat. There was no dramatic apology, no final reckoning where they admitted everything. There was only my decision to stop participating in the story they had written for me. Some days, that still carries a quiet ache, the unresolved tension of loving people who could only love the version of me they controlled, but the ache no longer runs my life. I chose myself, I chose the truth even when it was lonely, and in doing so I finally became the author of what comes next. Thank you for staying with me through all of this. If my story resonated with you, I'd love to hear what boundaries you've had to set or what you would do if you discovered the people closest to you had been quietly rewriting your story. Type respect in the comments if this spoke to you, and take care of yourselves.